Enhancements.
This will be the regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors of the Southwest Community Development District, being held Wednesday, September 8th,
2021 at 6:30 p.m. Held in the Central Clubhouse located at 2910 Spruce Circle, Untitled Chapter, Florida 33544. Present representing our forum, we have our chairman, Jeff Christensen, here. Assistant Secretary Lauren O'Donnell.
Here.
Assistant Secretary Tom Graff. Here. Assistant Secretary Andrew Mendenhall. Here. And our Vice Chair Sean Graves. Here. District Engineer Tommy Stewart. District Council Vanessa Steiner. Courthouse Manager Teresa Flores. Maintenance Manager John Gintalella. And myself, District Manager Gail Wilson. This time we'll move into audience comments. A reminder, we're going to keep the audience comments to a 3-minute maximum. Fairness of all the audience commentary. If the board has any conversation you'd like to pursue with after the comments have been made, then we can do that as well. I will start with Mr. Patrick Miller.
Greetings. One question before I forget. I know that CDD has hired legal representation for the 22nd. Have you hired a reporter?
A reporter?
A recorder, right?
You said a reporter or a recorder?
A recorder. Someone to record what's said, because if we go to appeal, you're going to need to have word for word what was said at the meeting. And you probably hire one right across the street from the courthouse. Just a recorder. That's all they do. They record everything that's said during the meeting, and Vanessa, I would think you certainly run across that before, Vanessa.
Well, we don't need a court reporter for a meeting if we had any hearings on the matter and would like to appeal a court's ruling. Then we would have a court reporter present at the hearing, so that we would have the trial transcript or the hearing transcript available for appeal. So if it does get to that point, we will make sure, and the counsel that we're working with is litigation counsel, so we're well aware of that as well.
Okay, well, just so we might want one for the 22nd as well. Let's see, do we have a strategy as to presentation? Are we going in heavy, strong? Are we going in with heavy artillery? Are we going in with just like guns? Is there a thought given to that? What's the approach?
Sean's been working with our attorney on that, I think, so that's going to be a discussion point.
Yeah.
Sean has, so there's going to be some discussion on the S19 later on, so just for the sake of finishing any other comments that you have in the 3-minute span, is there anything else you want to bring up, and we can touch on that as we go in the conversation?
Congratulations or thanks for being part of the community for getting John's petition up and out on the community's official website, communications, being able to get to everybody rather than just having to hang things on doorknobs. Being able to communicate electronically is part of what we should be doing these days. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Trina?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Anyway, I'm here to ask about Clubhouse protocol for COVID. When I asked, there was a certain situation that just recently happened with my daughter working here, and there wasn't anything in writing or in place. And from what I gathered, it was we're flying by the seat of our pants, it's situational, and I'm asking, what's the protocol? If there isn't one, is there going to be one? So.
Would you like Teresa to make a comment back to that, as far as what our protocol is, or discuss later on?
Yeah. I think that's something that we were going to discuss later, but I mean, Teresa, if you could.
I think she's referring more to the employment protocol.
Okay.
So if an employee calls out due to COVID or any COVID-related instance, they would have to provide us a note from a professional
basically excusing them for their absence,
Or test.
or test results. If anybody in the household also was tested and they have to quarantine, we as a district can also ask for their household test as well.
That wasn't asked of me, right, in our household for the tests. Like the people who tested positive, that wasn't asked.
I mean, as far as.
It was just specific
specifics
dates,
go-
of when she called out, when I had her call.
Okay. Well,
Anyway, the point is there needs to be like safety protocols and for the employees here, our residents. And that's my concern.
Okay, well, Teresa will handle the communication to the employees, you asked what the policy was, so that's the policy, and other than that, following the general policy outline, that's.
So, Teresa, has that changed since you and I spoke?
No, the policies has been the same, that we as a district are permitted to ask for any type of testing or any type of results or any type of quarantine through a medical professional. So we can do that legally. As far as a written policy, the board, we can talk to the board and we can put something together as a written policy for that and have employees sign it, if that's what the district would like me to do.
Well, we have policies in place the first go round when we closed the clubhouse and
Right.
then later when we reopened it.
Right.
But you're saying that isn't sufficient for what we're doing right now?
There was an issue with my daughter, and when I came in to question it, them asking for tests for specific dates I didn't get that answer. So what
you
I was
think that-
told was they were discussing,
Did you think that was a violation of HIPAA?
no,
Asking that
she,
information?
Teresa and I spoke, right? You said we're discussing it tonight, just come in and,
Well, that was a policy, but we had a new board and we were discussing COVID anyway, as far as what we're gonna do if the clubhouse closes and things like that, if someone has COVID. Those were the policies in place, but as far as asking for test results and stuff like that, that was always in place.
I think her confusion is, she doesn't see any consistent written policy as to what happens if things happen. So you have to ask and then find out. So it's not.
right, I'm getting a different answer now than I did when I came in to question.
So
So it's not like I'm trying to be an issue, it's just that I think it needs to be written and clear, and that's fair.
So, once we move into the clubhouse
Yes,
manager, we
clarification,
can talk
yes.
about COVID policies, that was already mentioned before. And if we want to make a formal policy, we can make a written policy, but as it stands, the question I see that was posed was answered. We have the policy, we just want the policy. Unless there's anything.
Just to my knowledge, and is it, as far as legal is concerned, is that an issue?
Teresa and I talked to Mr. Hill today.
I think we agree two separate issues going on here. Our resident is talking about, I look more on the employee side.
Yes.
And so the district has consulted with employment, the employment attorney that was previously retained specifically for the COVID issue. And in terms of the clubhouse in general for COVID, I believe, and I wasn't here when you were going through that process, but typically of the districts that are represented, they are following whatever the CDC guidelines or whatever local, at the time, there were different local governmental entity guidelines telling public clubhouses what they could do, if they could open gyms, that kind of thing. So whatever the regulation for the local jurisdiction was whatever was being followed. And I would assume you were doing the same thing, maybe following the state level.
Yeah,
There was no local level.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like it's situational, like I said, what she just said is not, like, we've had two discussions about it, and that was not presented to me in the way that she just did. It was a different conversation. So I just think, like, if it's more clear, and like he said, just have clarification on it, whatever she said should just be in writing, and it should be made clear.
Okay, we'll talk about that in that policy.
Yeah, that's definitely something on the agenda to talk about.
I think I had one or two late arrivals. Were there any additional audience comments before this time?
Just one point, those who may or may not be aware, just something that I came across in research this week. There's a Beatrice Mannion, known as BC Mannion, who writes for and is an editor for the Laker Lutz News. There's also a Susan Mannion, who is a planner and developer Tech 2 on the county staff. So that is probably how my cost-benefit analysis of that development made its way into Snyder's.
John, did you have any comments you want to go to the board?
Yes, sir. I'll use my 3 minutes the way it's supposed to be. So the first thing is, whenever you guys discuss and, further discussion at the end of the meeting, I would just encourage you to commit the CDD and the use of CDD funds towards an appeal in case the S19 doesn't go through and it gets approved. The appeal process, that initial $5,000 off the top, plus, it's better whenever legal people write the briefs instead of, lay people. So if you guys could discuss that and maybe come to a consensus that you're willing to go through with the appeal process. And similarly, if we win, so if there is no rezoning, yet the person that wants to have it rezoned appeals it, I would also request that the CDD commit funds towards legal counsel to act as friend of the court to provide a brief to the court saying what laws or why the CDD thought it wasn't a good idea to move forward with that. And then second, Trina brought up, and so did Ted, the issue of just having written notices. Whenever you go to work and you deal with food, there's tons of paperwork that says how you're supposed to handle the food and how you have to wash your hands, how long you have to wash your hands for. You sign that during the employment agreement. Similarly with COVID, because it's so divisive, some people wear masks, some people aren't. Some people feel very strongly behind their beliefs for COVID, and some are kind of laissez-faire. It would really help with the community if the rules concerning the clubhouse, not only for residents, but also for employees, were clearly written out. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
That concludes, we're moving to operations manager update. John's back on vacation, so welcome back, John.
So we don't have a long list. You may notice that the mulching of the property has begun. So the main collector roads, all the parks, and all the street trees will be part of this mulching cycle. Clubhouse also, it's already been done. So that has begun. Landscape enhancements that are happening are coming. The first one that's going to be focused on is the completion of the roundabouts inside Pinecrest and Forest Edge, where we reduce the islands. The landscapers are just backed up. The proposals have been signed for a month and a half, but it's just workload. So they're coming. Other than that, I don't really have a lot going on in the field that really I need to report. Of course, I've been gone for 2 weeks, but I'm catching up.
Were the residents in Pinecrest that Jeff Rosenberg was talking about, did they get with you? Did you have any discussion with the rest of those residents?
After the fact or while it was happening? Yeah, I mean, I haven't had any negative approach from anybody.
There hasn't been any follow-up or any
No.
further comment on it? Okay.
No, not at all. No, not at all. So there was a ton of praise of the project after the fact versus some of the friction maybe we had in the beginning.
Okay.
So. But I don't really have anything big to bring this meeting right now. Unless you guys have any questions, then maybe I can answer.
The landscaping part, the work, kind of what stage are we at that? I didn't remember the dates offhand, so.
Nor do I currently. Taylor may be better with that on dates.
Yeah, the date you're looking for, the next meeting is when we're planning to review proposals.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay,
As of where we're at exactly, we've had the pre-bid meeting. Questions were actually due today.
okay.
So tomorrow we'll issue an addendum with answers to the questions for all the proposals.
Do you know offhand ballpark how many bidders we have? Just a ballpark.
I mean, based on the pre-bid meeting, I would say at least 10.
Yeah, at least 10 or 12.
For what?
For the landscape.
Yeah.
How about
at least then.
Well, we have to discuss if we want to change contractors ultimately. The one gentleman that made a presentation last meeting is coming in the next meeting to bring his final presentation and thoughts to the meeting to see if the board wants to change vendors. So that won't be discussed right now, but the next meeting is already kind of in the writing to see if we really want to change, if you guys decide to want to change.
Was that for the sidewalk?
Yeah, sidewalks, curbing, pressure washing in general for the entire community. Because we do have a contractor that's under contract to do that. His contract's coming up. So do we want to keep him? Or do we want to move on to this other gentleman that made a presentation? Or I have a third pressure washing contractor that also made a proposal.
Yeah, full disclosure, I know somebody that does that, so I introduced him to John. I don't mind if I'm excluded from the vote or whatever, I don't have any skin in the game, so whatever you guys want.
That'll be next meeting.
Anything else for John? And with that, we'll move into tab 1 of the clubhouse report. And let Teresa present that, and then we can also discuss at this time clubhouse code policies.
Okay, so does anybody have questions on the report? No? I just want to let you know, I also spoke to Tim from the Works prior to the meeting, and we have no set date on the first phase of the renovations of the lap pool. Right now, he's still going with the end of September sometime. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now.
So they did the adjuster visit and all of that stuff, so
Correct.
I think we're just, do they get back to you guys on their findings, the adjuster?
I don't know if they would get back to you.
Oh, I'm sorry, what?
The
insurance.
I would think they would contact the district manager. I don't know who's
As far as,
contacting the adjustment.
Yeah, you had to walk around with them about like a couple days ago.
Yeah,
So,
That's-
yeah, you should follow up with me directly. Probably Teresa as well. But,
Is there a timeline that we should follow up with them if they haven't gotten back to us?
I don't know what the exact timeline is for that kind of evaluation. I'll be happy to follow up from, Monday. So don't worry about it.
That's
I'll
all,
make it
yeah,
up to you, so.
maybe they can at least give you a timeline.
Yeah, absolutely.
okay, so let's maybe go into COVID, policies. Would you like a written policy on protocol?
So if I could, I'd like to defer to council. Should we have a written policy, or is that something that, what would you advise?
Well, I think when it comes to employee issues, any employee matters that require discipline, I think it's better to have a policy in place. I don't know what policies we have, we've not discussed this before, but I think that maybe we should talk about what you do have and, what communications are provided, and maybe go from there.
Well, we have a general handbook for the employees now. It's not like we don't have any written guidelines for hand. But the COVID issue rides on top of that. If it needs to be amended, we can look at that. I think that's different from the public use of the building. That's more governed by what the state edict is. When they say close, you have to close. When they say you open, you open. As if you were a private club, you wouldn't have to accede to that request, but we're bound by what the state regulations are. So that's going to be an ongoing thing. I don't know if you can have a written policy on something which the target date is constantly shifting.
Yeah, Jack, I think from an employee standpoint, like you're saying, Vanessa, definitely something written in place. But as far as, the clubhouse overall, I think my question would be, and I'll refer this back to you, Teresa, with the way things are going right now, what are our steps to make sure we keep our residents safe?
Well, that would be up to the board. I mean, masks, our policy was masks are optional.
Okay.
I mean, if the board wants to go back to wearing masks and residents coming in the clubhouse wearing face masks, that's a protocol that I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the districts all went through this when the executive orders were lifted. and a lot of local governmental entities challenged the governor's ban on local jurisdiction over these protocols. As it was left, basically a local jurisdiction could not have these extra mandates, and nothing has changed since that time.
Yeah, I think from what I've seen as well, and it probably makes it the easiest for messaging to residents, is that most districts are following whatever the higher level local authority is doing. So, we're in Pasco, we follow what Pasco does, and if anybody asks a question, it's all online what Pasco is doing, and we're not doing anything crazy or different, and that makes it pretty consistent. As far as from an employment perspective, sounds like we should have something written down. I would recommend that, Teresa, you obviously have a policy in place that you might want to review that with legal, and then have the chair involved also, so that we can get something in place now, have it ratified at the next meeting, so it'll be on the public record, so if anybody wants to see what the policy is, it'll be right there. And that might be the most efficient way to kind of get something in place.
I think the sticky part of that we should probably decide here instead of giving it up to Teresa is whether or not we want to tell the employees if they have somebody at home that tested positive, maybe you have to quarantine for a while or not. I don't know if that's what we want to do or not.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's the decision we should make here, is like, push it down.
To me, I would rather have legal involvement, give some guidance to Teresa on the policy. It's just, I personally don't know what the legal ramifications of saying somebody has to stay home. I would not want to delve into that necessarily.
I think from our understanding, we don't have any right to tell somebody we can do that and miss out on work. It would be up to them to come to work or not, and then it would be up to us to ask for an excuse note from a medical professional.
I'm okay with that, just is there any other legal reason to do more? I mean.
Honestly, everything changes with COVID and regulations so rapidly.
Yeah.
I've seen employers prepare policies only to have to change them again later. So right now, I would rather not say that we should do one thing or another without really looking at what we have, what policies you have already put together on COVID, which are communicated to the employees. I just don't know if they've made it into an actual handbook. So,
Can I say something on the record? I don't think it's my responsibility to keep people safe, and not in that aspect, but everybody should keep themselves safe. If you look around here, no one's social distancing. Some of you wear masks, some of you aren't. So if there's rules and everybody wants me to follow, then I have to make sure everybody that's at the clubhouse is following that same protocol. I keep myself safe. I wash my hands, I honestly don't social distance. You can't in an environment like this. People are in very close contact with me every day. Same in the school system. Who's keeping our children safe? I get text messages from our school that your kid was in close contact with somebody next to COVID. What do? Do I stay home for 12 days every time I get that email? I'm being honest. I would love to keep everybody safe. But how do I do that?
In our conversations with Mr. Bell too, it seemed that the strongest suggestion was to stay near with the CDC because it's continually updating as necessary. So we kind of align ourselves with that rather than make our own written policy of whatever it is today and then tomorrow to change it again. We kind of align with the CDC recommendations and reference that in our policy.
So wouldn't it be on every individual to keep themselves safe?
It should be, but I don't know exactly what the issue is with Trina. So is there something specific we need to address?
Well, so 3 of 4 of my family members got COVID. My husband and I were out, laid out for 3 weeks. And my daughter wasn't. She tested negative when we all tested, and I sent her to a friend's house so she could start school. I also told her to call Teresa and say that the nurse practitioner that took her test said, y'all need to quarantine. So that's what she did. I thought I was doing the right thing. And It's that, like, so to keep her safe and other people safe, like, that wasn't really my point. My point is there was no clear things. I didn't save the tests. I was never asked for my test. I was only asked for hers. She was told by another, is it Christina or Christine? She was told by her that it had to be 2 specific dates that she documented. And that was told to her twice. So there was confusion, like, for what was being said to her, and then I heard several different things. Tonight, even something different. So something clear for clarification, I think written, even if it's generic and says we will ask you for a doctor's note. I mean, we all had to do doctor's notes when we were younger. If if you have a positive test, if that's legal, then you give that to them. Like, and have that in writing so it's clear. It wasn't clear to my daughter when I asked. It wasn't clear to me twice. I've had conversations and now I'm still confused. So, I mean, it's not clear. And I think it's in the best interest for everyone for it to be clear. Anyway.
I think we need to keep this at a surface level of policy and not anybody in particular who's employed or not employed here. We've had lengthy discussion today with the employment attorney as well on policy. So I think if the board wants a written policy, we can do that. It's again going to be generic because it's going to follow CDC guidelines. He said that we are allowed to require a note of either a test or a doctor note, we'll call it, for excused absence from employment. And that's relatively standard. So I think we follow with his recommendation on that. The only thing that he mentioned was that we could consider or reconsider offering paid leave. It's not required anymore, so maybe we don't want to do that for everybody. We currently have been doing it for everybody. Maybe we just do it for full-time positions. That's really the only gray area that I think we have left to get direction on.
Well, that area was in play during the first round.
It was mandatory
Where
before, right?
you were required
Right.
in our situation. We already had the money budgeted, for their employees, so it wasn't thought it would be an additional burden to have to pay people that were not
And we
working.
can keep it in place.
But we went beyond the letter of the law on that to make sure that, and I'm not sure at this point, we need to revert to that same position. That hasn't come up, has it? Okay.
I think that would, aside from yes or no, you want a written policy, that's really the only other thing that we really require direction from you guys on. Because again, you did need it originally, you don't need it now. Do we keep it, do we not keep it, or do we keep part of it for full-time or salary? We wanted to change it in that regard. But that's the only other question.
So I don't want to spend a lot of time on this tonight. Would you recommend that I work out something with Teresa and?
I'll make a motion that the chair works with Teresa and district council together written policy. They can be put in place immediately and then ratified by the board at the next meeting.
Okay, I like that. Thank you, Andy. Motion by Andy, a second on that?
I'll second.
And in the meantime, I can ask some questions to the board. Would you like us to require masks again for the clubhouse and more staff?
No. Just following CDD guidelines.
What are we doing for cleaning sanitation?
We have 7-day cleaning service, so we clean out every day.
All right, so we got a motion on the table in a second. All board members take that motion.
Second.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Any further discussion required on the code policy this time? Any other questions, comments for Teresa or clubhouse report this time?
Well, I just have we want to go back to finishing up the cafe renovations, if you don't mind. I know, we want to wait and see, but I did provide 2 proposals and some samples. If at all possible, I'm still going to request that we can get this done sooner than later. We just have to finish up the cafe cabinets and the countertops. So I got 2 proposals, one from Con Asset and one from About Face. One is to completely install all new cabinets and granite quartz countertops, and the other one is to refix. So I don't know if you saw that. Okay. So we chose some samples here, that would go nice with, the cafe decor right now. But this cabinet here, this would be to reface, the cafe. I'll pass it along. You can see it's a lot, more sturdier than, this one that we received from Asset. If you just take something, basically, and that's what's gonna damage that cabinet. So,
Are these pressboard with, aluminum on top?
well, I was gonna have John, contact the two companies and, get some more information about the different types of cabinets and so forth. But I wanted to see, once we get all that information, if you can approve or not to exceed, just so we can get this finished. Or would you still like to wait?
Is there a voting on that?
What's the condition of the current construction of the cabinets right now? Are they solid enough to withstand refacing, or?
Well, they're pressed board and they've had water damage in the past to them, so they have a couple swelled areas. Same thing's gonna happen. These are pressed with laminate base. The others are solid wood, I think.
This is a solid wood.
Yeah, that's a solid wood.
This is the reface? Yes. But the water damage is only underneath the sinks.
Yeah, where we have water intrusion under the sinks area. So,
That was because we had.
Is it 5, 10, 15% of the cabinetry in there is affected?
probably nothing else.
And it's more that nothing matches anymore because we're upgrading and that's kind of what we're
Do you have a tentative quote what the difference is, ballpark, between the two projects? Refacing versus,
Oh, yeah, I have a proposal right here.
17,000.
$36,985 to do all new cabinets and quartz countertops, and then $17,494 to reface.
so it's doubling it basically.
So you'd be keeping the countertops.
No, we
If
changed all the
do the
countertops. No, we would change the
No.
countertops
Change
for
the
either way.
Okay.
Your proposals are their satisfactory as well.
So what would be the concern if you go to the?
I don't have concern with this expensive.
It's not, this is heavy durable, but it's,
But I think we need to,
Yeah, I haven't
we need to
seen,
call them and see.
yeah, I haven't seen that second one.
Now, the existing right now, obviously, are the less expensive type. It's the same sort of product, press board and whatnot. How long do they last, roughly?
Oh, since the buildings, yeah.
So,
I mean, we fixed the damage underneath.
right.
It was just part of the building.
So realistically, if we were to pay more for the more expensive, the reality is in 15 years, even because it's solid wood and it stays in better shape, we still could, at that point, be changing the floors out, changing the other areas out, and still need to swap it out. So does it make sense to pay twice as much?
I agree, I mean, I'm gonna propose if you're approved of the refacing, but
I mean, for me, if it's my house or something, that might be a little bit different, but for here, knowing that you're gonna have a turnover of things around it, I don't know if you get your bang for your buck for having something that much sturdier.
the refacing, my daughter had her cabinets painted, professional painted, not re-laminated. Would they re-laminate these or are they painted?
No, relaminate.
Re-lamination.
but this is not laminate. They're not laminate, they're not just laminate.
And this is just the door, and they'll reface the current base.
Not with laminate. Oh, well, the sides, but not the actual, all the drawers and all the
If they're
cabinets.
gonna be this is your door and door right here.
Yes, and that's,
But the base will be refaced, not repainted with this material.
It'd be making match.
So, John, from a standpoint of the conditions of the cabinet, refacing would be better option?
Well, it's a less expensive option, number one, and Andy makes a good point. There's a high chance you'll probably spend money in the future to update the cafe again. The current base, I gotta go spend a little more time in just investigating the water intrusion, because if we have any swelling or swaying of the cabinetry, then refacing may be difficult, but they can just replace that framing if necessary. So refacing should be a fairly simple process for them to do. That's if you want to keep your current configuration that you have.
yeah, everything's the same.
Timeframe of job starting, job ending, do we have that?
I didn't really look into all that.
Will, comments at the non-refacing, will they do a proposal for refacing?
I did ask him, but I haven't gotten it yet. Couple of days.
Yeah, the finance that's willing to provide a refacing proposal, I think it'd be in our best interest to get that. He did a great job on the bathrooms.
But the only thing is, I don't like it, he gave me this.
Well, that's okay, that's not a refix. He can-
No, but this is,
He can get anything anybody can get.
Yeah.
This is not proprietary.
right.
So what's the not to exceed here?
I would go with the not to exceed that, about face 17,494.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
I'll second that motion. All right, that's a motion by Tom, second by Andy. All in favor?
Aye.
Second, me too, discuss, any further discussion on it?
I guess my only question is, so let's say there is some damage to the cabinetry. If they're able to fix it, then we're good, right?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is that if you want to look at the proposal from the other contractor, you should get it. You know, you're gonna go knock in a number of 17, the guy comes in at 19.5, but he's a much better contractor, then you've already limited yourself.
Yeah.
So I have no clue what his proposal is gonna come back at, because we don't have it.
I'd like to see the timeframe too, and what they think the project would take.
I would feel more comfortable waiting until the other contract comes in rather than locking us into one tonight.
Yeah, we just don't know what the other one is, so it'd be beneficial to at least see it.
Yeah, and with the timeframes, as mentioned,
I don't know what the parliamentary procedure in this, the table it to,
We can table it, I'm having surgery anyway soon,
Yeah.
so.
We just have to vote and everybody vote against it.
I
We
didn't,
can table it like that.
I didn't vote yet.
So table it?
I'm not driving. so
You're almost there. I said no. Correct.
I guess we got a second, so we have to vote.
Yeah.
So, all in favor?
Of what? I'm sorry.
All in favor of approving the not to exceed amount of 17,494?
No.
Not any opposed, anybody opposed? Okay. Good. So, motion's dead.
So we'll get into the other proposal.
Look at it
next month.
Sounds good.
Can they show you a picture of a door or a section that's been relaminated? Well, it looks significantly different than the new one? That's what my question is.
I didn't understand your question. It's gonna look just like that, that's what you're asking.
Yeah, it's gonna look just like that.
This is it.
Well, yeah, okay.
Well, he doesn't do anything to this. This comes in just like this.
Yeah, that's the door. All he does is put the laminate on the base
So laminate the base.
Okay.
To match that.
to match that.
If this is the style you're picking. I don't know.
That was the one, I chose.
So basically you're getting new doors.
You get new doors and resurfacing the base.
Because you're laminating both doors and. Okay.
All right.
Well, let's hold
We'll
on.
look at doors again next month. Yeah. Get comments of the proposal as well.
I did also want to update you on the splash park. Last I heard from Contact, it's at the end of September, but I did get the proposal from Pool Works to build a new splash park.
Okay.
So the number's over 300,000.
The numbers are,
Over 300,000. And that's to redo everything, all new equipment, all new filtration, resurface, the whole thing.
Just about. That's pickleball court.
yeah, that's a lot.
I don't have it.
I think that's got some life in, especially since we just invested, what,
Well,
$6,000-7,000
well,
in new.
all that stuff that we're doing now is just Band-Aids.
Yeah.
So hopefully they'll last. But if you might want to figure out budgeting purposes moving forward for a new one eventually. Or-
Yeah, we have to
You're
get it
getting
all.
that.
Yeah, yeah. We got to talk about
So this would be through Aquaworks equipment for the pool works.
More cabinets. Anything else for Teresa on the front house? Teresa, you got anything else?
No, I don't have anything else.
We'll go into the district council update then.
Just as a follow-up from last meeting, Teresa mentioned it, we do have a contract in place now with the Pool Works of Florida for the pool project, and Tom was helpful in getting that together. And as far as the damages claims that we're looking at regarding the other repair project with Phoenix, we have spoken with, and Tom has spoken with the attorneys from the law firm of Bush Ross and their construction litigation attorneys are in Tampa. I don't know if you have anything that you would want to add, but they seem to indicate that they've already been involved in working with us with the insurance adjuster coming out and taking a look at the claim, and seem to indicate that their involvement would be relatively minimal, that we wouldn't need extensive legal services at this point. So I think that's good news. We'll just see what the adjuster comes back with.
Yeah, they seem pretty confident that based on the contracts that we have in place, that everything looks pretty good in our favor. You never know until the adjuster goes back to us, but it looks pretty favorable. I don't think we're even gonna be needed, really. We didn't even pay her anything yet, right? Yeah.
She's very confident and impressed with the contract in place, so.
Yeah.
Kudos for her. Kudos is due.
Yeah.
Was there any assessment or feedback from the insurance company that did the walkthrough?
Not yet.
Not yet, there's
We're
specific.
waiting on that, yeah, I'll follow up Friday or Monday, see if you got there, we'll share with you guys.
Other than that, I have nothing else.
I had one thing I was gonna mention, the Sam's Club easement for the fiber optic,
Okay, yeah.
do we need to get a pre-approval on that, kind of like we did with the other easements, so.
We were contacted by a company that's handling an installation of fiber optics for a new Sam's Club. And they don't have an easement to be able to go through to have those cables run to the new building. So they're asking if the district would give them an easement. And at this point, we really don't know what the project is just yet. I asked for some additional information. Where would they need this easement? How big would it be? Are there going to be any improvements on it? Just under it? What is the request exactly? So we haven't received that back yet. I don't know what their time frame is on it. They didn't indicate that it was something, I guess the question for the board would be if they are requesting this easement agreement, and depending on what they're looking for, it may be a more extensive agreement or it could be a simple easement. Is that something that you would request that I prepare for them, or would you want their attorneys to prepare something from our review?
We could do like the Otera where we ask them to cover the fees for that. They could prepare an initial one and you review it, of course.
And do we know where they're asking for this at, as of yet?
Generally,
It's for the extant building right now.
she said, it's the entrance into the Sam's Club, Summergate Boulevard, and they are looking for a right-of-way or utility easement, and the only easement they found doesn't go beyond Summergate Boulevard. So they're looking for some additional right-of-way or utility easement where they can design and build the fibers. I don't even know if they'll need the easement. It's possible there's another right-of-way. We really haven't looked into this too in depth, but
Refresh.
It probably would be west coming this way because they've got that new dialysis center there. They'd have to go west of that toward the Cashford Circle buildings to come through. They're not looking to erect any kind of building or shed.
well, that's what I'm asking,
Yeah.
if they need any kind of equipment housing or if it's just strictly underground or just pass through. I don't know what the request is.
I would say let their attorney, let them provide what they want to do and we'll give them a game day on it. It's too early in the game to even entertain it at this point.
Yeah. Just wanted to bring it up as something that would be arising here.
Okay.
That would agree.
District engineer, tell me.
Well, don't believe I have any reason to bring up the issue I was here to discuss.
Do you have anything else to report on the forest land?
I got the pictures from John and the pond restoration looks beautiful. I did get a request from Swift Mud to contact them about an issue, but, I guess that's one thing, I guess, with the board, you can give me direction if you want to have me reach out to Swift Mud, but we had a, does everyone know about the situation? The resident reached out to Swift Mud for the slope restoration that we had coordinated, and just to remind the board, it only took about a year and a half to reach a contract to that deal, and went back and forth with what was the cheapest solution versus the most appropriate solution, and you as a board went with the higher cost, more appropriate solution, and they now have about 10 extra feet of their backyard. So, the pictures I saw looked beautiful. The work I've seen the contractor do in multiple projects is, I've been always very happy with it. I've been monitoring their work for over 5 years. Keep going back and looking at it, so very confident that we have a long-term
They got the site back in?
Sides, yep,
Okay.
looks
So
great.
was that the same one that we got the email on about how they told us to stop? Because,
Yes.
and that was resolved.
I don't even want to engage in conversation about it, to be perfectly candid with you.
Okay.
It's a shame that the resident chose to go down that path.
Well, I'd like to bring something to your attention on that same subject, because I am a resident, and there's several problems with the restoration of that. It's not a long-term solution.
I can't hear.
When John Kawanda, my name is John Wood. When John Kawanda from Swift Mud came out to the area to look at it, he specifically noticed that there was an excessive amount of water between both my house and the residence next door, and also the other side where between my house and the actual sidewalk from the opposite side. Bottom line is there's some type of water substance that makes the ground saturated wet there. John had mentioned that the best thing to do is get in touch with the engineer from the CDD, the representative CDD. They have them go out there with them to do some drilling to figure out why the ground stays saturated there. I mean, throughout year round, it's saturated there. And the fix that they were doing, and the reason why he tried to contact you guys to stop is the fact that what they were doing was clear through Swift Mud. John said there was supposed to be clearance through Swift Mud, coordination with Swift Mud to make sure that, it didn't cause additional issues with the drainage or with the runoff. Right now I have, of course, I do have a little bit more back space in the back of the house. However, what it's done is created like now a building there. There's a significant amount of like a building there, like you would have a cup, right? So you could watch water just sit there on top of it, and it's washing out the bottom of what they've put there on the bank. That's washing it away already. My thing is, it's great. It's a great concept. What they did was dredge some of the pond and put the dirt back inside on the bank to create additional space, which is a good idea. Just like if you went out and looked at the ocean and they do dredging and put some more sand back on the beach because of erosion. Problem is, it's still not a long-term fix. Short-term, still got drainage problems on both sides of the house that needs to be looked at. Still have an elevation slope that is far beyond anything that I've ever seen anybody else around here experience. So I really would like the board to consider doing a little bit more additional research, trying to work with Swift Mud, find out where this leak is or where this additional water is, why does it stay saturated there? Because it's not my sprinkler and it's not my next door neighbor's sprinkler. It stays saturated there all the time. Mr. Kawanda said that there could be a possible spring that developed there after the building was done, whatever. But something needs to be determined where it's coming from. So that's why I'm bringing it back up to your attention again. We need to do a little bit more further investigation versus just slap the table saying, oh yeah, this is done, great, it's good. 2 years from now, we're back here now complaining that there's still a drainage issue, there's still saturated water there, and it's causing further damage to the property, not just mine, but so to the bank. And then the other issue item that John wanted me to mention to the board is, and that the reason why he was trying to get in touch with, back with the engineer is, he was talking about the area where the pond drains into the gutter system to fail over if there's like actual flood or whatever. That is all, there's so much grown up weeds and stuff over there that the water couldn't go in and go any place else except for on the bank. There's no place for the water, if it's overfilling, to go any place else to drink to another pond.
You're talking about the far end, that littoral shelf?
Right.
I don't think we have any control over, that's the kid.
No, we do. We do.
Do we?
Yeah, I would pull the construction plans. We try to, and I don't think we've done it here, but every single drainage structure that we have throughout the community, we generally like to put on our maintenance plans. I just came to your district well after all your mapping was completed, so since your community is so large, we've never taken the time to do that because of just work, effort, and cost. But we may be at the point now to make sure that Solitude, the pond management company, so they're every single structure upstream and downstream, that they are part of their contract is to make sure that that gets maintained on a regular basis.
But the work that was done now, the fact that the water runoff that's coming off that house is now underground and it's surfacing 5-6 feet out in the pond. So it's not coming down and then washing the bank anymore.
Oh, but it still is, it's not just the water from the rain from my house. It's water when it hits the ground. It has no place to go, and it's gonna follow this little path. So if you look at the way that how the house sits, or that whole area, if you mention the grade, the grade is extremely steep. I don't care where you look at it. It's an engineering solution needs to be done, not a Band-Aid on a fix. Somebody needs to actually go out there from an engineer perspective, find out why there's, or fix the grade, or find out where the water is coming from, or why it's saturated out there. You can't just say, okay, well, it's done, this is all we're gonna do. 3 years from now, we're gonna have the same problem.
So here's my question, Tom, you can answer, Vanessa. The water that stands between your neighbor on your property plot, am I correct, it has nothing to do with the CDD? On the plot, private property, because multiple houses in this community have water standing between their homes. They just do, because they're close together, they don't get any sun. Whether or not the contractor graded that property properly, who knows?
Do y'all remember when we actually went out, Josh complained about the fact that he had standing water in his watering hole. So I went out there, did the same thing, and we actually had borings done. We went to the extent to try to even have borings done, to basically say, we have clay material in this region, we have elevated groundwater conditions, we just started having excessive rainfall, and particularly this residence lot, it is designed differently than anything else. It was designed with a steep slope. Nothing that we can fix, it was designed that way.
Well, let me finish.
Sorry about that.
What can we do on this gentleman's private property? Nothing. We can't do anything on your private property. We can't do anything between your houses. It's not an easement to the CDD. It's private property between the two homes. So the district, if I'm correct, has nothing to do with that. Am I correct?
That's my understanding.
That's my understanding.
It's a home building activity.
Drawings that those homes were supposed to have a back to front drainage.
Well, but that wouldn't even be a district discussion.
Yeah.
Because it's private property.
Yeah.
Whatever the developer developed.
So whose responsibility after the developer hands it over and CDD takes full responsibility? Whose responsibility is it now to make sure that there isn't anything that develops based on the development?
Well, and
That's the builder that does that, that's not the CDD.
yeah, the CDD only has the responsibility of its common ground. Your plot and your neighbor's plot, how you connect between the two of them, is private property. Anything that's standing in there or why it's standing in there, the district has nothing to do with it. It's private property, and nor would they address it. The homeowner would have to address it in some way, shape, or form. Now, you can't dig a French drain and run it to the pond, because you're not supposed to do that, but you can dig a French drain and run it to the gutter. which many homeowners have done, to control that. You can take your downspouts and bury them into a French drain and run them to the gutter, so they're not spilling between the two houses. You know, those are things that you can do. But the district has nothing to do with standing water between homes, because it's private property.
Okay, but
On
that's one side, so.
On the north side of your property,
Right.
you know, wherever your plot ends, right? The district has a portion, I'd have to look at the map, but I think the district has a portion of that grass area, that flat area.
That's part of the line, I think.
Well, no, it's high, it's up on the north side of his property.
Okay.
Why water stands there, I got water standing all over this place.
Well,
It is heavy clay.
Look
throughout
at
this
the
community.
pavement. I walked in, I had a client, I had to go visit in Sun City Center, and he said, I've never had water like this before.
Yeah, I mean,
And I took pictures of his, and I took pictures of the parking lot. It's like, it's happening in the parking lot.
I'm not saying that nothing should be done, because that's the board's decision, should they want to go forward with investigation or bore drilling or whatever the case may be. My input is, it's standing water. It's not, I can take you to 100 places we don't mow, because it's the water's standing so high. And we don't go in and bore those areas to figure out if there's a spring below it. My renovation of my park, right now, the community's park in Stone Creek, has been on hold for 5 weeks because of the rains, and the clay base that's below it, it just won't drain. It's just taking forever to drain, you know, just because it has a heavy clay base. So the south side of your property between your homes, the district just not going to do it. We don't have any responsibility to it.
That's clearly understood.
The slope, the bank repair, putting onto the professional, the company that repairs these banks for a living, I'm not quite sure whether or not your statement that it's not going to last and it's just a Band-Aid is something sitting okay with me, because you hire a professional to restore a bank. They've restored many banks, and time will tell if it's going to fail or
Well,
do its job.
and we monitored it. We've been monitoring this product for over 5 years.
Yeah.
Trying to make sure that we had options like this for this very reason. So we did test cases in a couple of communities with our fingers crossed going, we're not 100% sure because of the quality of the material, because it used to deteriorate with the UV rays. That doesn't happen anymore. So we tried to make sure we got enough data support and field work to be able to clearly say, we believe this is one of the more economical, best ways to stabilize the slope.
Yeah, I mean, the board will have to ultimately decide if they want to reinvestigate or reopen that door on that bank refurbishment. I don't recommend you do that. I don't see the reason. It's done. It's done by a professional company that does it for a living.
Is there a reason why we couldn't approve if he wants to hire somebody to dig a French drain to allow him to, you know?
That would be an A&R.
Well, we don't, on his private property, he can dig a whole French drain. Just as long as they drain to the front of the house.
I'm saying, do you need access to the bank that we just built to get through
They
that?
actually put a couple of the roof drains directly into the pond.
Well, that's in the past. Those were removed, correct?
No,
They're there now.
They came in there and they took and rerouted, they dug on my private property, and they took the downspout and they ran it all the way around the side of my property, and right.
Okay, that's news to me. That's the first time I heard of that.
Well,
Yeah.
they did
Because
it,
that-
and I, like I said, I don't have a problem. The problem is I want to make sure that this is, and to the point out to the board that there's, to me, and just from my experience, working with Army Corps of Engineers for 25 years, I can tell you, this is gonna be a potential problem in less than 2 years, I guarantee it, because of the way that it is sloped down and how it's sitting right now where there's an actual gully. If you walk the property, anybody here can go up to my property, behind my house and walk, and see for yourself. I mean, I even put a piece of tape up or a string to measure the actual grade. It's well over 2 foot from the top of the bank to where they started and stopped the bank. So it's 2 foot from here to here. My thing is, the only thing I can do to protect my property is build my own seawall at the edge of my property. That way I know the rest of my house is gonna be protected and it's not gonna have any problem. If there is, God forbid, if it starts sliding that way toward the bank.
Well, if you feel that's necessary, you have that ability,
Well, that's what I'm
depending on
saying.
the approval of the homeowner, not the board, but the homeowners association,
Right.
to put up a seawall, which would not be on the edge of your property because you have a 5-foot setback off of that for anything you can erect. But that's SOPA, that's not CDD. You know, that's a whole different monster.
Right. Well, I'm just saying that to, to point out, to protect my property, I mean, my only thing is, I would put a seawall there, which is something, I think, you brought up before, long-term effect. We had talked about that in the work before that. Putting a seawall is a long-term fix, and you wouldn't have to worry about coming back. Me, I think, honestly speaking, that's gonna have to be looked at and evaluated on a yearly basis, and an analysis has to be done on it to make sure that it's not, an ongoing issue. That's my whole point, right? So.
And we typically do not, unfortunately, because of the cost, a retaining wall is usually cost prohibitive because you have to make sure that it is designed with a footer that will go below the lowest water level that the pond would go down to. So it gets a little complicated in terms of building walls. That's usually why you hear us talk about that. And that's the important thing about this geotubing. There are 1 or 2 other products out there that are 3 and 4 times the cost of this, that we have not found to have a better benefit. We really haven't found. Granted, it's only been 5, 6, 7 years we've been monitoring this, but a lot of the products that we started out with 15 years ago all failed within 5 years.
So could you just, I'm not familiar with it, so could you just grade it from that 2 feet down? Could it be graded better?
If it's graded, you're gonna, so if I start here and put back or put fill in it, I'm gonna be filling up about 2 foot. So my property would, if I level it out right on the property line, I would have to add probably about 20 yards of freaking filter in that whole area to level it out right, so it's not such a steep grade. If you go up,
I don't know if that's a good solution or not.
Well, yeah, that's a homeowner choice, that's not a CDD choice, so this.
Well, that's the way to fix the bank from this time I agree. You guys are more than welcome, I invite you guys over there, give you some water, whatever, walk the whole property, and you tell me, in your own opinion, instead of just listening to mine, take a field trip over there, walk the property, and tell me.
What's the address?
And Jack and I did go out there and take a look at it, so Jack's.
I don't know, I mean, I'm not an engineer, so I don't know.
I know, but I mean, at least
Probably not.
visually you can see, walking on something, you'll be able to see that there's a major difference. And if you look around the community, how that area is completely different from anybody else's property.
Well, and just to comment on that, the 119 ponds that exist on this property, they're not all the same. There are plenty of pond banks that are far steeper than the one behind your home. Unbelievably steep.
But not directly by somebody's house.
That's not true. I got the home that I owned in Edenfield, had me hand mowed because it was so steep I couldn't run my rider on it. But my point is that, just to summarize, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, because I'm just trying to put it all together. The homeowner doesn't seem pleased with the result of the $9,200 repair from Cross Creek. And he would
Definitely take my words and misconstrue them.
Okay, well, that's why I'm asking you. I'm not trying to.
Well,
Because it sounds like you want us to go out and reevaluate it and find out if it is the final product. Is that correct? Or it has to be redone?
I don't know, John, you're the engineer, you guys.
No, I'm not the engineer. No, I'm
And
not.
leave it up to the engineer.
That's why we hire professional companies to remediate pond banks.
I'm not gonna sit here and contradict.
I have a question.
No, I'm trying to summarize this, is that I'm trying to summarize what
When
you
summarize
want this.
something, you shouldn't summarize, you should let it up to the board.
I am, that's what I'm trying to do, my friend. I'm trying to get the board to
I
understand.
have a question. So, for you, you were just saying that the work that was done was not done correctly. Is that what you're saying?
The work was done, whether it's done correctly or not is not my opinion. And my opinion is that what they've done was a fix, but maybe it should have been done a little bit different. Because what they've done is created a different problem. They kind of solved one, but they created another one by putting a gully now where water actually pools right there where the difference is at the end of the property line where the grass was, to what their fix was. It's not level, it's a gully. That's all I'm asking.
John, you have some time.
Oh, yeah, I could go take a look, but all I'm gonna do is call Cross Creek out there.
Exactly.
Because Cross Creek is the professional.
I didn't see it right above. Was that something that was created after they put the subdivision?
He said it was created after the whole thing.
And I think what you're gonna find is probably the water level, as it stabilizes, is gonna somewhat encroach over that geotube. There's kind of a balancing act that's gonna happen that obviously it kind of watches. You're going out there or whatever to find out what that final grass line is gonna look like.
So just because I haven't seen the area, so Tanya, after the work is completed, you've seen it, looks okay from your perspective, from an engineering perspective?
Yes, and I've only seen it through John's pictures. I will go out there and physically look at it myself and know exactly what the resident's talking about. I see that on all of them. It's the way that the geotube is placed and all that stuff. I think it's why it lines up like that.
Yeah.
But knock on wood, I have not seen any kind of concerning issues with it, with the locations that we put this.
So that seems like a logical solution. Have a look, if it seems outside of what you would normally expect, just if you can report back to the board, and then if further steps need to be taken one way or the other.
Yeah, and more specifically, if you have something that you think on the CD property needs to be addressed, but you also mentioned that there might be another water source coming from your property, so.
Well, that's what I'm only telling you what Swiftmuck and John Warren came out to look at the property. They walked it.
Yeah.
He's between the houses on both sides, right? Between my property and the CDD area where they mow right by the embankment there, and also by the sidewalk. It stays saturated there the whole time. And I brought this up before. I think it might be overwatering from. And I mentioned this to John too, overwatering that area because you can't shut one of them off unless you have to rezone that whole area, but it stays saturated there the whole time. That's what he was conveying the message that he had said, that maybe that's something that we could look at later on, but there's definitely a source of water that makes it saturated there the whole time, just to move it.
Okay, I think we need to move on.
Well, it sounds like his only request right now is to have it looked at. Tanya hasn't looked at it yet, so let's give Tanya a chance to look at it. And I don't think there's anything else we can decide on tonight.
The one thing I guess I would suggest is I will reach out to John Wanda.
Yeah, good idea.
Okay.
Sure.
Thanks, appreciate it. Thanks for your guys' time. I mean, so much time there.
Thanks.
Tanya, did you have anything else that you wanted to go over?
I know, that was all.
All right. District management update. Your next meeting is held October 13th, 6:30 p.m. back here. I don't have any additional items other than what we've already discussed in the last two updates. So unless there's anything else you guys cut for me, we'll move on to some of the next comes on the agenda of the business items here. We got financial status update. We're currently $579,000 under budget. That is looking excellent. And unless there's any questions on the financial report, let's move into open discussion for S12, S19. We had some questions regarding this.
So S19, I've had several conversations with our legal attorney. They've had multiple meetings with the commissioners. I've had 3 out of the 4 meetings with commissioners, and I think I received an email which I forwarded to you that it looks like, based on the planning commission, they are denying the rezoning of S19 to go to the VOCC. Plus,
What's that based on?
it's based on, so they do a economic breakdown, which I forwarded to you as well, and I don't know if you sent it out to everyone. But based on the economic impact that it would make to the county, that was one of the main things that they saw that would prevent it from.
That land going forward would be worth more to the county as a commercial product than
Correct.
as a residential product.
Correct. Something else that, the attorney was also talking about is with the property that's already slated for, multifamily in the back, they were just saying, you know, that we have that available now, that the contractor would be able to eventually start construction tomorrow if they wanted to at that particular site back there. So everything is.
What's that right there?
There's some sites in the back of the community that's.
12/75.
Correct, that's slated for multifamily currently today.
Right. Do they own it? You said they
That-
would start tomorrow.
Yeah, that I don't know. She did not provide that information to me, but so far, everything seems to be going in our favor. But again, anything can change on the October 12th date.
Tomorrow's the planning commission meeting.
Yeah.
FYI.
At 1:30, so,
Are you gonna be there?
I will be.
Any further discussion from the board on the lots? That's all right.
Question. This is, material I've been handing out to you guys, and sending to you guys. I mean, is that useful to you guys, or do you care at all? I mean,
I haven't received any, so I'm not sure what you're talking about.
About what?
Do you guys receive any emails?
briefs that I've been putting together on S19. I even handed out at the last CDD meeting. I mean, does it matter?
It does. He's kind of running a point on it, so he gets other.
Yeah, I'm
information.
taking that information, working with our attorney that we have there.
But to your original question before, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense in a public meeting here to tell what our strategy is. So you might not get a whole lot of information here. What you provided might be helpful, but we probably won't provide a lot of helpful.
Feedback, yeah, because
Right.
I'm not getting any feedback. So that's
Just let
what
me
I
know why.
asked, you know, do you care? I mean, like, because I can stop sending them.
It's taken under advisement, thank you for it, for work on that. Just that we don't want to tip our hand at this point publicly.
Okay,
Any further discussion from the board? All right. Discussion on project management was requested, Pedro.
Yeah, so, I know I kind of brought this up, before, but, I just want to make sure that we are, doing the due diligence to, the community, with the projects that we're working on. I know we've kind of put a halt on everything. But I wanted to see Teresa, you know, looks like you're definitely having John involved with a lot more of the projects. But I think we need to kind of streamline even more, because, you know, for instance, today, you brought a proposal for the cabinets, but we didn't have a complete proposal. So I think if we can maybe get John more involved and kind of give him your vision and let him run with it from there, so that when the information is coming back to us, we have it and not bits and pieces and trying to go back and figure things out. So my recommendation.
Yeah, board opinion.
No, I mean, they didn't do anything, they just talked about it today, so I think usually they're, without him on vacation, they're usually working together with stuff. I think it's kind of a new concept anyways.
It's a good point, it's been for a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving forward then to tab 4, we have the Series 2016B letter. This is for the new bond refi, just to engage in LS, tax solutions, who handles all the rest of the bonds that you guys have. So it's really a renewal contract, if you will. We're looking for approval for this.
Any changes?
It's just updating the bond series since we refinanced the 2016 bond.
I'll make a motion to approve.
So,
First by Andy, second by Tom, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. On a separate cover, next item, we have the consideration of the district insurance proposal. I sent you guys an email on this, I don't know if you all got a chance to read it prior, but, long story short, at the time that we moved over our insurance policy from, preferred, there's a couple of things, but, from that company to Aegis, you had two separate policies. One was started a year prior, has been renewed every year. And there's a second twin policy that was taken out in addition 3 months later. In the renewal process, we only renewed the existing policy that has been going year to year, not the secondary policy that was supplementing additional items. So what we're looking to do is add the additional items to the current policy so that we have everything all together. Monuments, a lot of the stuff, but basically everything other than the clubhouse itself. The current policy has the clubhouse. Other items throughout the district are not encompassed in that policy. So I provided everybody a list of things. We just did a walkthrough, Aegis, myself, and Jack, and looked at the property as well.
The last time it was reviewed, there were different valuations given to different monuments and different entrances that didn't seem to get justified. They're virtually the same, except for the community or a non-gated or a gated community. So those have been adjusted, and we're also given an option, which we look at, is we may assess the evaluation as being the gross amount that we want to insure, but we don't have to insure the first year for the full amount. The fact that those are very low risk policies to begin with, we might only assume for half it and then take a 3/4 and the full amount at some point. We have that little flexibility. Our intent in doing this walkthrough is to get a full assessment of what all the property that we have, everything that we own, and have it under one policy rather than under two different policies with two different companies.
Right.
Price is different.
I'm sorry.
There's a price.
Yeah, the price will be more because we're adding on everything other than the clubhouse. So when we first originally switched over, the clubhouse policy that we have now is basically quoted off of the previous policy.
Well, it's not only the
So this
clubhouse,
is
it's all the
first.
pools and your
Right.
storage sheds and everything like that was our
Put on this
clubhouse.
property.
Had windstorm damage, for hurricanes and so forth. But the other stuff didn't have that with it. It didn't have windstorm. Because in pretty bad hurricane, I still see those walls out there standing. Everything else, unless a tree falls down, it might cause some damage, but just in and of itself, it's not gonna blow over.
Comments. Just a thought. So two things, and I don't know if you know this offhand. Do you know what our deductible is? 5,000, 10,000. That's what.
I don't know. I have to look at it.
Yeah,
It vary based on different.
Yeah, the only reason I say that is because we have a number of items that are 10,000 or less, and hypothetically, if our deductible is 10,000 or if it's 5,000, we need to look at those. The otother thing, what all the insurance companies do is they'll give you the full replacement value for different structures. So for example, our boardwalk we're insuring for $368,000. The likelihood of us losing the entire boardwalk is not likely. We shouldn't be insured for that much. I mean,
Yeah.
It's not a huge deal right now, but just something.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's actually something we were actively looking at with the playgrounds, for instance. The
Yeah,
playgrounds
sure.
have astronomical values on them, and they're pretty well put together, concrete into the ground. And if there's not a lot of trees around them, there's not a whole lot of risk there. So
Yeah.
that's something that we're looking at.
They will, as we probably all figure, insurance companies, they will insure everything. They're insuring you for $15,000 worth of pool furniture. The chance that you lose all your pool furniture once probably pretty low. You might, in a worst case scenario, have a couple thousand.
Right.
So those sorts of things. If you look at it in aggregate, we could save quite a bit of money on insurance. So, I know timing wise, it's not a great time to figure it out right now, but just something to think about.
Well, what I'm looking for, because again, we just did the site inspection, I just got this report, I think I sent you guys like a couple days ago. So the values absolutely will be reviewing and probably trimming down a lot of the fat on these numbers. What I recommend tonight is, I guess, just looking for approval maybe for Jack and I, since he's already been present with the whole insurance walkthrough and this process altogether, is that him and I want to just work together on trimming the fat out of some of these numbers as far as what we'll add to the policy. We can go from there.
Yeah, I'll make that motion if you and Jack work on those numbers and get it taken care of.
The renewal will be effective October 1st. That's when the new policy starts with the new fiscal year. So that's what we're shooting for. But this is just the first draft since our site visit. They've been able to propose everything with numbers and such for us in an itemized fashion.
Sorry to interrupt. So, if we see something be adjusted or whatever based on, maybe if you send an updated, you know, hey, we're trimming this, take a look at it, we just respond to you, right?
Yeah, I can send it out and you just respond back to me. And then again, me and Jack can finalize everything prior to October 1st, because we will need to get it in place before the next meeting so that we can have the gap in coverage.
If you trim the evaluation, you can get stuck in kind of co-insurance.
No, I can confirm with them, but to answer your question, now thinking back on our conversations with the playground, I believe the deductible was 5,000, just.
No, 25.
Was it 2,500?
2,500.
Okay.
Co-insurance is different.
Yes, no, you're correct. I have to ask about that, I don't have a for sure answer on co-insurance, but.
Yeah, I'll second his motion. Did you motion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And, I'll get Andrew on the deductible on co-insurance as well. Moving forward then, discussion on the poolside landscaping proposals. I don't think we have any proposals right now for that. Mulching looks good though.
Smells good.
Yeah. Under tab 5, we have the minutes of the board meeting held on August 11th, 2021. If no questions or concerns, once you review what we're looking at in there.
Motion approved.
Motion by Tom. Second by Jack, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Tab 6, we have the O&M expenditures for the enterprise fund for July 2021, we're at $6,424.20.
Motion approved.
Motion by Tom.
I'll second.
Second by Andy. That's a big shot, though. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Tab 7, O&M for the general fund for July 2021, in the amount of $130,786.31.
I'm waiting for
I'll make a motion.
Yes, by
it. I'll second.
Second by Tom, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And supervisor requests. Start with Tom, work way down the line here.
Good.
Nothing, Andy?
Nothing for me.
Nothing, Sean?
I'm good for now.
John?
It's not so much a request, it's just to put it on the record that I think it's come to my light anyway, that there have been lack of attention to detail, should I say, in the part of our management company in providing us with proper documentation. And this insurance is just an issue of that, transition from Angel to Matt to Angel to Brian now to Taylor, that we've lost track of those policies and they weren't being kept up. One was being assumed that it was being renewed automatically year to year, and it wasn't. And we don't get that kind of, we rely on the management company to provide us with that information, and I want that to go back to Scott and to the head of Rosetta, that we pay a little more attention on the switching of managers, that they're all up to speed, because I think we lost, potentially we could have had some damage that we weren't covered for.
I'll pass that along and push up the letter. I know I've already spoke with it, so that, but we'll get it around.
On the flip side of that, in speaking with the lawyers about our contracts, that we've done an amazing job. So I don't know if that's Didick or you, or I think it's Didick, but that was good. I mean, I'll give you full credit. But we got a lot of accolades for how we structure things. So.
Yeah, and obviously I can hear that one, I will let you back in.
Jack, anything else? Anything else for you?
One final comment, Sean, Vanessa. I was serious about hiring a court recorder, because even if it's looking good for us right now, it looks like, they're gonna turn it down, a DeBartolo could very well appeal. And in that case, we would need a verbatim record of what had been said at the meeting and what had been presented as evidence. So, yeah, and it's cheaper to hire one before, rather than have someone transcribe an afternoon's proceedings.
Are those hearings not recorded?
Yeah.
They're
They're public.
They're recorded and
They have a recording, but when I've been to the county meetings, they're all recorded and so forth.
They're not accepted as, full and legitimate, word for word on paper.
It's a law, you have to have it transcribed. It's just like the
Yeah.
notice that comes on these meetings. All these government meetings say a little blurb. You have to have this, you know, the exact verbatim transcription. You just have to pay the service.
County charges, I think $7 a page.
Well, I'm not familiar with the law on that, but
What my experience with local government is that if somebody did request a transcript of a meeting, they would have the clerk transcribe it or at least a portion of the meeting that's requested.
Sounds good.
I haven't looked at Pasco County's meetings or what, you know,
Yeah.
procedure.
What is
The old would go to Florida courts.
When is tomorrow? At 1:30.
The appeal would go to Florida courts and their rule says transcribe. But they- Anyway.
No taking, Patrick, thank you.
you're transcribing it after the fact as opposed to,
No, he's saying have someone there.
Yeah.
Transfer.
just taking dictation.
Mhm. And like I said, you can probably find one right across the street from the courthouse. Any courthouse.
I don't think it wouldn't cost that much to do it.
I don't know what the fees would be.
Depends on how they pay.
Exactly.
7,000.
I mean, we have, I have a CDD West Jason, and it's not, it's pretty expensive, but their meetings are 2.5, 3 hours. So you're talking 200 pages. So it can add up.
Well, it depends on how long the reporter probably has to sit there and wait for the guidance to come up as well.
Sure. Because I'm sure there's other items that's there.
So, but, you know, unfortunately, I can't really speak to it.
Again, I think right now, note taken, because, you know, we still have another hurdle after tomorrow. So that's the most important.
Supervisor Press, Lauren?
All good,
All right.
thank you.
With that, then, no motion to adjourn.
Go ahead.
Supervisor Ryder?
I'll second.
Supervisor Tom, all in favor? Any opposed? Carries, adjourned at 7:50 p.m.
How's that look?
Hey, like I said, after you guys,